Hi guys, so this is gonna be a bit of a rough cut. You may be looking around a bit just because I'm gonna be looking at notes, but now that the company policy is out, I don't see any reason why we can't in particular share quite a bit of feedback that the company was giving us, because a lot of people are asking why are they doing this now, also how it's gonna work. We're gonna be trying to do some Q&A sessions, I believe, um, toward the end of the week as well, potentially. We're still working on that, but I wanted to get something out now, so it's gonna be a bit of a rough cut, so bear with me. But to begin with, I'm gonna just give the reasoning that the company gave us. So I'm gonna kind of look at my notes here and read from a few things. So again, bear with me here. But when we essentially asked the company why now? Why do they need to do this now? What's going on? Their response to us, as an overall response, was that first and foremost, they feel that they were, in their words, a hospitality industry. They're in the hospitality industry, and their ability to provide that service is being jeopardized specifically by cast member callouts. And there were three particular reasons that they gave us on top of that. So the first one was that the cast member callouts specifically, again, only cast member callouts, were impacting the individual operations. That by cast members calling out that somehow each operation, whether it was retail, whether it's attractions, foods, custodial, was declining again specifically because of callouts. So again, we're having discussions with them. It wasn't that Genie Plus isn't really liked when you compare it to FastPass. It wasn't, just throw something out there, that there's a lot of videos on YouTube of attractions breaking down, or issues that are being had in the park, a lot of social media incidents, anything like that. Wasn't poor operational decisions, overtime, cast members feeling they're overworked, anything like that. Again, specifically, they just feel that the call outs are the reasons why each operation is declining. The second one, which was a little more interesting, and we gave them quite a bit of pushback on this one, was they felt overall their ability to stably schedule each individual operation again was being jeopardized, specifically, again, by cast member callouts. We were very quick to respond to them that they don't schedule correctly now. They don't follow seniority preferences, etc. We're having to grieve that stuff all the time. And so that perhaps if they fix that, that alone might fix a lot of the issues for the cast. In addition, we also said maybe if they started offering 410s again, that might help as well. There was a third thing that we also offered that they refused to bundle with this. By the end of the talks, they just said, we have no interest in discussing this with the attendance policy. So we will approach them again, see if they change their mind. But shift trades to off, unlimited. We asked them, why is there a cap? That's the company, that is not the unions. We have always had a stance that as long as cast members are responsible and help cover their shifts, that it's essentially the same thing. That shift is going to get covered. Somebody would, in theory, work it. The company disagreed. So that one, we may have to discuss at a later date with them. But they did not want to discuss that now. They did not want to, at this time, as they're rolling out the attendance policy, look at something like unlimited shift trades to off. So the third reason also that they had stated was, in addition, that they felt that the overall morale for each individual operation, again, was significantly declining, and the overall cast member experience, in particular, of working for the company was being negatively impacted, again, specifically because of these cast member call-ins. In addition, we asked them, why change it? There's the point system, it's been that way for years. And we just asked them, what's going on here? Why change that? And they gave us two conflicting answers on that. Now, the first one was that, and just bear with me here, I'm going to try It makes no sense logically, but I'm just going to say what they said. On one hand, they said, okay, look, it's a complicated system, points. This is, again, their response. It's just so complicated, it's confusing the cast, and there's just confusion as to how to use it. On the other hand, they said, okay, look, casts understand the system so well, they're abusing it. And they're able to abuse it and min-max their points to avoid discipline. So those are two conflicting ideas, but those are the two that they gave us throughout the discussion. So overall, they felt that somehow this was going to be something that helped. Now, in addition, when we asked them for the overall reason, they also stated that they felt that, again, with the above three reasons I had given you, they all kind of tied into this mentality that if they start cracking down on this, if cast members see it, if they see people being punished for attendance, abuse in their words, that somehow that was going to boost the morale of the cast members, that they will feel appreciated. They'll feel that the company is treating them, taking them seriously, and that morale overall will rise as people are punished. Now, we did ask them about that, and in a situation where something may result in, either higher turnover or separations, etc., on a larger scale, that's not typically how these things work. Morale declines, if anything, but the company, that was their reasoning. Not going to justify the reasoning for them, simply going to relay what they told us. And overall, over the past few minutes, I've covered essentially their whys, what they hope it'll do, which is pretty far off, in my opinion, in assessment, and the direction that they're trying to take it. Now, there was one other thing, in that they also acknowledged that, and I believe this was resort-wide, that on a regular basis, there was somewhere between 10 to 15% of the entire resort calling in on a regular basis. We felt that was more of something they should look at as far as morale and potentially operational issues, etc. They felt that strictly the call-ins are jeopardizing the morale and nothing else. Again, not issues with Genie Plus, not issues with the reservation system where there are lines for hours at a time if there are technical issues. Any other line of business where they're asking people to do overtime every single day. They didn't feel any of that was applicable. We also asked them if they were going to fix the CR program that they had just rolled out and implemented as far as the Monday through Thursday, Friday through Sunday. Some operations, because of the way they implemented it, which is still not functioning correctly in our assessment, there are sometimes not enough undistributed certain days. Like, for instance, maybe Monday through Thursday, there's only 10 or 20 undistributeds for the entire day to cover callouts, etc., which is only further complicating issues. And they do not have a timeline for addressing that either. I know I specifically asked them, is this going to be fixed by October when you guys roll this out? And they had no answer for that. So they took it back as feedback. They said to look into it, but at the end of the day, they did not provide an answer as to whether they're going to have that fixed at that point either. So again, our suggestions are potentially implement 410s, unlimited trades off, fix the scheduling and seniority so that they're being followed, and so on. Those suggestions ultimately just went unheeded by the company, and they moved forward with the current policy. Now, some of the things that they did tell us when we did ask, because we kept saying to them that this is potentially not going to be enough for the average person who has, let's say, transportation issues, family obligations, even if they just catch a cold, or worse, because we're still in the middle of a pandemic here. And what they said was two things. They said that they increased it from 16 hours to 25 hours, and said that they felt that by increasing it those 9 hours, that was generous on their part, and that they felt that there were other legal avenues that cast members can explore, whether it's workman's comp, FMLA, CFRA, the calling out 6 days in a row, then going to get the doctor's notes for a medical leave if the doctor's note does in fact indicate medical leave was required, and so on. And now, one other topic that we had brought up in regards to 410s was how the company seems to have this aggressive aversion, I mean, these were my words, to a cast member being able to work 4 days with 410s, to the point where this new policy that we're proposing would potentially punish them because their average shift is 10 hours and they will have to work that. And in addition, we've had instances of management simply lying to cast members to try and convince them to give up grandfathered provisions for 410s, etc., and telling them, don't worry, you'll get it down the line. It's just that this pandemic has been so difficult, and so we can't accommodate that. Now, Labor Relations' response to us was that that's actually left up to area management, and area leadership was their term, and that they are the ones doing the assessing of all the work and the labor. It's not necessarily a company policy. So beyond that, they didn't really say anything other than that it is actually up to management, that they could simply be giving those 410s back to CAS if they had taken them, and that they're leaving that assessment up to workforce management, and specifically area leadership. So if anyone has been told differently, which we relate to them, they have, then that in itself is problematic. Now, the system overall seems to be a little more streamlined. They're saying that for every 25 hours that cannot be covered by sick, so you can still use the sick hours to cover and subtract. So let's say you do hit 25 hours, but you had been able to supplement 10 hours of sick, then really you'd only be at 15 hours, for instance, and it would take another 10 hours that were not covered to add up to 25, and you'd have a discipline. On the flip side, the tardies are more of a separate thing. If you cover those sick hours, you can, my understanding, remove that. However, it's not tracked and combined with the absence total. So the absence total is separate. So let's say you, according to the policy, you can miss up to 3 hours. Then that would be where, at that point, you could cover 3 hours to try and remove that tardy. However, you would be paid for it, but that 3 hours does not combine with whatever your absence total is from what they've told us. So, and we will have more Q&A sessions, and we will be looking at asking a few questions as far as clarification, since they did ultimately choose to just move forward with the policy. Now, again, something else I want to let everyone know is we have not endorsed this attendance policy. So we did ask that they take some feedback and potentially bargain with us, and so that we can help with some of these other things. And ultimately, they just said they were going to move forward with the policy regardless. And so to that end, it does not have the endorsement of Master Services, or, as far as I know, any of the other unions beyond Master Services, but I do not want to necessarily speak for them. I can only speak to the Master Services meetings and discussions that we were present for. Now, one of the other big changes that we've been in discussions with them over, and that they ultimately have in this attendance policy, is you will see references to 3 hours that for a tardy. That a tardy is considered anything up to 3 hours. The reason for that is the company is going to push for anything after 3 hours to simply be an absence, meaning whether or not the cast member shows up, it would then at that point become an absence. Now, again, no call, no show rules would still apply in situations like these, but as long as the cast member, according to the notes that I have here, as long as they show up, 3 hours or less, it will be considered a tardy. If it is more, then it would be subject to leadership area management discretion, meaning that in theory, the manager could say, okay, just clock in and work even though you're 4 hours late. On the flip side, if it's 3 hours and 1 minute or later, if it's after the 3 hours, area leadership and from what we were hearing from the company may also push to simply say, sorry, this is an absence now. You can just go home. This is a huge disconnect, at least from our assessment, but the company feels that this will address tardy issues. My understanding is for people who had been coming in like 5 hours, 6 hours late, etc. So this is their response to that. Whether or not it's going to work operationally, it seems to be kind of disconnected from where the operations are right now, as far as several areas having to do overtime every day with CRs, full-time, etc. Shortage of staffing, all the job fairs, the high turnover rate, etc. But per the people that we met with for discussions who represented the company, they said that their intent is to treat something over 3 hours as an absence, with a little asterisk basically that says, but subject to management discretion at that point, where they could simply say, well, keep working. And we also voiced several concerns as far as, well, this could potentially lead to favoritism, etc. Now, one final topic that I wanted to bring up, because some people have asked how the covering of the hours would work. Again, we had floated something like maybe something slightly more than 2 hours. And the company just did not want to hear that a small amount of time would be able to remove any infraction. So it goes up to 8 hours. So if you have overtime, for instance, as a standard shift, and you miss, let's say, 6 hours that day because your shift was only 6 hours, or 8 hours that day because your shift was only 8 hours, you'd have to cover the duration of the shift to have none of that count against you in the bank that would have to go to 25. Now, if you cover 4 of a 6-hour shift, that means that you have still missed 2 hours, and that will go toward the 25. And then as it adds up, once it hits 25, that would trigger a discipline. So again, any sort of supplementation you can, and it caps at 8 specifically for the average cast members, with the exception that anyone who does have 410s, unfortunately, the company has designated at this time they would have to cover up to 10 hours instead of 8, because their average shift is 10 hours. Now, the company also said that they felt that that was a substantial enough difference of those cast members working less than, or 52 days less, I should say, in a work year, assuming, and that's a big assumption on their part, because some of those people during the pandemic have still been picking up a 5th day, for instance, and they're probably working even more. But they felt that if someone specifically has 410s, they would have to cover up to 10 hours to remove those hours, whereas the average cast member who works 8 hours and then gets overtime of 2 hours, they would only have to cover what the straight time is, so the 8 hours, and then they would not have to cover those 2 hours of overtime that they have by not being in the 410 program. So that is something that's also going to be potentially a big difference. And we ultimately asked the company again why they felt that was necessary, and ultimately they said it boiled down to they felt it was a substantial enough difference that 410s can potentially work 52 days less. So for now, I'm just going to cap the video here. I'll reiterate a few quick points, and then I'll just leave it at that. But again, what it boiled down to when we asked them what's going on is essentially they're blaming the cast for the decline of the brand, or the inability to schedule correctly, etc. They're specifically saying in particular that the call-ins and the call-outs are the reason that they have to do this, And I put that in quotes for a reason, because there are other alternatives that we floated to them, whether it was unlimited trades to off, actually following scheduling and seniority and so on. And ultimately, while they did say they would take that under advisement or they would discuss that amongst themselves and get back to us, ultimately it appears that they just disagreed with some of the ideas that we gave them that could have potentially lifted morale for the cast overall and also addressed a lot of these issues. So again, we'll be doing some Q&As, I would imagine in the future, to try and answer some more outstanding questions that some of you may have. In addition, some of the things that we were asking the company are, what is it going to look like as far as educating the cast? Was it going to be a hub announcement? Are they going to be doing Q&As? Their response to us was essentially they were going to focus on getting their management trained first. And then between the rollout of this announcement, which is technically July 20th now instead of 19th, to October 2nd, somewhere in that window, they will figure out how they're going to educate the cast, get them explanations as far as the system and so on. But again, they don't know what it's going to look like. They don't know what they're going to do as far as that part, other than they put out the hub announcement. Now, if that changes, we'll of course let you guys know. But at the time of our last talks with them, they did not have an answer beyond they were going to focus on educating the management first so that they can implement the policy when the time comes, and then go from there. If you guys have any other questions, let us know, and thank you.